Hey guys, hope everybody can hear me okay. We're live here now. Hope everybody's having a great night. Thursday night, starting of June going on here, right? So that's pretty cool. We had some a lot of racing last weekend of May, just getting everybody started off. We had Nora had their Friday night oval race. They got some 60 entries going on there, and then of course Die Hard. They had their opener Saturday with 150 some entries. Great turnout for those guys. Kind of their opener weekend. It's like, if I remember right, they got rained out recently, so that was a good turnout for them. They kind of had a long day. I think their last race went off at about 9:30 on Saturday night, and then Nora on Sunday we had 85 entries up there at Skagit River on the off road. Which hats off to all those guys that came out on Sunday to burn laps and compete with their fellow racers. You know, being a lot of them raced Saturday night at Die Hard, and them to get up, and there was a few guys that stayed locally that are from that travel a little bit. So that's always really cool to see those guys come out the next day and do that. You know, one of the reasons that Nora and myself try to do those Sunday races, we know there's a lot of racing going on Saturdays throughout the Northwest. You know, with Tacoma being just south indoor, mainly 10th scale, of course, right, in a short course, and then Die Hard. They're a big place, and they have a lot of different racing going on, oval, turf. They got drags and some other things going on. So we didn't want to have to have people choose between those two events throughout the summer. You know, if they kind of overlapped on some weekends. So we decided to put most of the races for Nora on Sundays so people can come out and take care of that on Sunday. So one of the questions that we've been trying to answer for people and kind of playing off what Jason Calkin put on the podcast that he did. Of course, he went on Lefty here a while ago. Was one qual or two on club races. So we talked about it within the group up there at Nora, and we said, if we can't get through qual one in 2 hours, unless there's just a tremendous amount of entries, then of course we would make some changes there. But there's always marshals and time. You know, we don't want to rush people. They need to come out and be able to enjoy it. So we said at the drivers' meeting, let's get qual one done within 2 hours, and then we'll go on to a second qual, which we end up doing. It only took us an hour and a half to get through the qual one, and I believe it took right about hour and a half to get through qual two, obviously, it was really good on the racers. Qual one usually takes longer because people got to check in. So for qual one and qual two to be really the same amount of time really says, hey, that everybody understood. Let's get these done so we can get right into our mains, and we did that, and we were done by, I believe, like 4:30 on Sunday night with 85 entries. So really appreciate everybody everybody coming out, and back to some of the local racing that was happening around the Northwest. Um, Die Hard, of course, they had 150 some entries, and some of the classes that I noticed that are pretty heavy. We got four wheel short course, sportsman e buggy, 8 scale e truggy, and 40 plus e buggy. All of those look like they had at least a B main, a full B main up there. And Nora, we had two heats of short course, and they run a tracks of slash class too to get some people interested into RC racing. So there was a good 13 of those, 13 or 14 of e truggy, and I believe, full heat of Sportsman 8 scale E on that platform. So that's really good for showing those kind of classes and who's running what. So we approximately took about 9 minutes. I was doing some calculations, trying to figure out like how long are we spending, with our heat races and the time it takes from the end of the tone, and that's usually, when the RD, finishes the race, or that last qualifier comes across and finishes the race for us, if you say it like that. It's been about 9 minutes from the time that went off until the next heat got up and got done. And those heats were 6 minutes, I believe. So, or 5 minutes, I believe. So that's a 4 minute turnaround from the time the tone goes off until the tone goes on again. So that's with checking cars in on the first qual and getting a lap. So that's pretty impressive. Mains, we had a total of nine, um, different mains. Started out with 11 because of those combined classes that were like a B main, if you want to look at it that way, for the qualifiers. We ended up with nine on there. Um, they were 10th scale were 5 minutes, 8th scale were all 7 minutes, and then our nitro was 15, and we took about an hour and a half to get the main. So really appreciate that with everybody getting the program going, marshaling, getting out there. I don't think we had 1 minute call during our mains, if I remember. So that's pretty impressive on that everybody had their stuff ready to go. So right now we're in a little bit of a break in the NCT as far as our races. We had, of course, 2 weeks ago finished up at the Hank 255, I believe. So next event we'll be going to Eagle, Idaho, and Eagle Hills there for round 3. So don't forget to go to the My Shopify site and get signed up and make that event. Those guys down there are really putting in the effort. I don't know if anyone's following James Ingham, but bringing in dirt, doing a lot of stuff with the driver stand, and doing a lot of stuff with pit lane, or not pit lane, but drop tables, and they're getting the community involved. And if you guys are, I didn't make a copy of that, but if you look on Facebook, you can see that I believe it was James or Tim Wallace. He's quite the character, right, guys? That they came up with like a note that if you need to, take to your employer to get the day off, it's an excused absence. So thought that was I thought that was pretty cool. What they did there. But a great bunch of guys down there. They want to have this. So they know it's a long haul for everybody. So want to put on a great event. And of course, Ryan Rivas, he'll be flying in there on Friday morning to continue the RD for the rest of the season. So really appreciate that. A lot of behind the scenes goes on with the RD and getting that off. I know that we're going to post the current points up with 2 rounds. I'm sure there's a few people um, that are interested in where they land in the points going into the third round. So we want that to get out there, of course. Um, but one of the questions that we had um, was right here, right at the top of my screen here. What do you guys think of one qual or two on the club races? If an hour and a half, you can come in and qualify approximately, depending on how many entries. Under, I would say around 100 and so entries, you're looking at around 2 hours for qualifying, and then approximately 2 hours for the mains. Doesn't really matter what day of the week that we're talking about. But get out there and do your thing and not spend a bunch more time qualifying, because depending on the grid, um, that you're talking between 8 and 10 feet between the grid lineup. So obviously a guy that qualifies fifth, you're talking 50 feet from the first guy, but get out there and get done in one qual, and let's get it on the line for our mains. And if we have a possibility of maybe even on some clubs throwing two mains in there to try to get it done or whatever. So just want to hear your guys' feedback on that. Throw that in the chat, later once we get done with the broadcast tonight. Working on some guests. We kind of started a series with AJ and Joe Rodriguez over there in Spokane. They're doing that next level clinics. We've talked about that, talked about some history with those guys and racing, and talked about kind of what's next. So we're going to continue. We're going to continue that probably next week, next Thursday, and we're talking about bringing on, another guest at the same time. Hopefully that's going to be a father-son kind of duo also that's done quite well in their RC career, if you'll say, here in the Northwest. So looking forward to making that happen. And you guys have some questions ahead of time for them, go on to the Facebook group or even comment in here, go to the NCT website or to the NCT group or the page and throw some comments in there, what you guys would like to see, be talked about, questions we talk about setup, or what you guys, one of the things I always want to know is, what is considered a success, at the end of your weekend. We talked to AJ and Joe about that a little bit, and they consider the end of the weekend their success, even if it was a learning success or transitioning through some different products or setups on a car, and not so much where they are with their overall result sometimes. But if they improved, and I think that's important for all of us to realize, and Joe kind of talked about that. You can speed your lap time up one or two times during a race or even in qualifying, but if you make a mistake, now you're putting your lap time back in the hands of a marshal to get you back out there without maybe losing any time, that maybe you went a little too fast in that lap, and that put you kind of a little on edge and made you roll over or get out of the line. And now, maybe you're 1.5 second faster if you could have finished that lap, but now that marshal took 3 seconds, so now you're behind the 8 ball, a second and a half or whatever it is. So that's definitely something to learn from. And slow is fast sometimes, and hitting your marks, and not overdriving the car, and all those things. So um throw that in the comments about the one qual or two quals on club racing. If you guys have a, kind of a time limit that you want to get done by, and even if it's, someone that's watching that's, maybe in another state here, or you actually have a buddy that's racing in another state, talk to them, and, what do you guys do? And if you guys have a limit, and how long you take to do something, and, nobody wants to throw a penalty for a marshal, not coming out in time. But if we're waiting, on marshals to get the next heat or the next race go on, well, then that's something that you're gonna have to talk about, within your club and on race day, because we want to get the program going. So anyway, appreciate everybody coming on, and I know a lot of people watch this after the fact, so appreciate that. Keep commenting on here. I'll keep this going here for a little bit, and just a short Thursday night, and we will talk to you guys next week, probably with a couple of guests, and hopefully next week get some more people on here to get ready for commenting on that, because those guys want to have some great questions. So we'll talk to you soon, guys, and thanks again.